Let's stand for the pledge of allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Welcome to our county work session, and call this meeting to order. The agenda, we have 3 items right now. Ted, did you have something, short one you wanted to add at the end?
Yeah, I wanted to get kind of a little bit of a consensus here of the board before we add it. I've been getting some calls from the highway department. They're not happy with the UKG program, and I didn't know if that's something that we can discuss at the end of today's meeting or not.
I can provide an update.
Okay, we'll add that at the end.
Okay, thank you.
All right, well then we go right into the agenda. First one would be Kitchigami Library.
Hi,
Melissa.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Melissa Watley. I'm the director for the Kitchigami Regional Library System. I'm here today to talk to you about our very first initial draft of our 2024 operating budget. So here in Hubbard County, we operate one physical library, the Park Rapids Library, and we do also offer library services through our bookmobile. That it goes to LaPorte and Nevis and Poseida. So this is our 2024 budget draft. I always start my presentations by talking about who we are, just in case there's any new commissioners or people who have not yet met me or heard from me. So we are a 5-county system. We have 5 counties we serve with 9 city libraries. We also have 2 associate libraries, and then our bookmobile that travels around the region. We work to enhance the quality of life of our residents by providing access to library services. We value public trust, diversity, inclusion, innovation, access, and excellence. So we really focus on providing programs for the public's education, entertainment, sense of community. We want resources to help connect anyone in the community with the right information at the right time. So not just when our libraries buildings are open, but we also have a good collection of e-resources that anyone can access any time at night on our website. We have facilities that are safe, welcoming, and adequate for community needs, and staff that care about and connect with their community members. Really, our staff, I think, are our greatest asset because they do such a good job working with our community members, knowing the needs of their community, and working to fill those needs. So we work real hard to create community connections. I included just some images from our various programs that we've had. Kevin Kling came. We had a music party up at the Long Lake Theater. We've had some really good presenters, Bluebirds. We had Anton Troyer and this Clog Club on the next one. I'm probably pretty far ahead of you. If you want to just come down 2 or 3, I think. Sorry, we're doing the quick version this morning so I can get into the meat of the budget. So what we do in Hubbard County. So for Park Rapids Area Library in 2022, you had a pretty busy year. Over 26,000 visitors. You have almost 11,000 registered users. We had 52,000 circulations on the over 15,000 items that are in that physical collection. Another huge thing that the library does that I'm not sure that everyone realizes a big service of ours is we do have public computers available for internet. So for people who may not have good internet at their homes or may not have those devices to be able to access the internet, we do provide that both through public computers available in our facilities and also wireless internet available at our facilities if you want to bring your own device. We do also offer programs that people can come to, so 77 programs with over 2,000 in-person attendees. We also had we had 221 meeting room uses. So I think that's a really good feature that we offer as well, where people can come and book a meeting room. If you have a meeting, if you need to meet with your lawyer or have a supervised family visit, I mean, anything the community might need from us, we have that available and free of charge, which is really nice because, you know, you go to a hotel or something, try to get a conference room, it's gonna cost you some money. So if you're Boy Scouts or Girl Scouts, we could offer you a cheaper option than that. We also have our e-library. We have over 16,000 items that got over 132,000 downloads throughout the region. Again, that's our 5-county region, not just Hubbard County. We also have 60 databases available, and we will be getting access to more. The state just recently voted to provide funding to Minitex, who's kind of our central library servicing to get nursing databases. So that's going to be really good for our college students who are getting into nursing, as well as consumer health databases for just the average consumer who wants to get some information that isn't just Googling Dr. Google, right? We also have access to physical materials statewide via interlibrary loan. So kind of where we are in our budgeting timeline right now, this is a very, very early draft. So right now, our budget committee is taking a look at this. We went to the June board meeting to get the full board's feedback on it. The budget committee incorporated that feedback into this budget that you see here today. Now, this is not the official budget. At the 20th meeting, July 20th, the Kitchigami board will officially approve this for distribution to cities and counties. So it could possibly change based on their feedback at that meeting, but at this time, this is the budget committee's best proposal. You'll get the official one after our 20th meeting. So we would like to give all of our partners in the cities and counties an early look at these, especially so they can see sort of what direction we are intending for 2024, what kind of costs we think will be attached to that direction, and always to get your feedback. Our goal is to work with you to make sure that the residents of your county have the library services that they need, but we also always want to keep in mind the financial situation of our partners, right? The library is not just going to come to you and have you write a blank check with your name on it. We want to have discussions and give you the opportunity to say, like, hey, Hubbard County, that's looking like too much this year. What can we talk about making changes? What kind of cuts can we make? Or we're happy with it, we're fine with it, let's make it happen. So if we get to, I think, slide 12, just a little further down, for the 2024 draft budget for Hubbard County, regionally, we're looking at approximately a 5% wage increase for our staff. That includes this 3% cost of living as well as 2% step increases. For the Park Rapids Area Library, we are trying to get some increased staff hours and add one position, a 14-hour per week LA2. That's going to really give them the opportunity to provide more programming and also have more duplication in their schedule. We've kind of had our staffing running at like lowest possible levels, but that can cause us issues when people are sick or when we're between positions. So adding a little bit more staffing hours is going to give them more flexibility on their schedule. We also are increasing our training budget to reflect the increasing costs of conference attendance. The library professional conferences are upwards of $1,000 when you factor in travel and hotel and all of that kind of stuff. We don't send everybody, but we like to send our branch managers when possible. So I did increase that budget. We're also making some changes in our shared collections. So audiobooks have been a very big staple of the library for, I'd probably say, the last 15 years or so. Car manufacturers aren't putting CD players in cars any longer. So while the audiobooks are still a very good service for people who have perhaps limited sight ability or who just appreciate having that option, it's sort of fading away as far as like the use of people using audiobooks in their cars, and you're seeing a lot more going into streaming now where they do the Spotify or they stream things like that. So we are responding to that change. We are removing some audiobook rotating collections and putting funds into our streaming collections instead. So overall, at the Park Rapids Area Library, you're looking at a 7.7 increase in branch costs over the previous year. For the Hubbard County itself, we also have an additional kind of thing we want to talk about for that. Last year we talked about we were going to have like large increased costs. We knew we had a union coming in. We knew that we were going to be increasing staff wages. We knew there would be a significant increase. So we started a county levy buy-down program to help sort of absorb that high change in costs for last year. So our budget committee, and hopefully we're going to get the approval of the board at our July 20th meeting, our plan is to continue that levy buy-down program for 2024 and actually keep that going for a few years. So we want to contribute $28,000, $941, to reduce the Hubbard County levy for 2024. So if you get to the next slide, that gives you the actual operating budget for Park Rapids. And for those of you with a printed out version, I realized that was a little blurry. So I did go ahead and print you out an actual physical paper at the end of your packet there. So that shows just what we talked about. Increased staff, increased training budget, some increased costs. What we are asking of our cities is that whatever percentage increase their branch is showing, we want them to match that increase in their own percentage increase for 2024. So for the Park Rapids Area Library, you're looking at a 7.7% increase in their branch total. We are asking them to give us a 7.7% increase in their levy over last year. So we are asking them for $52,700. What that leaves of the branch cost for Hubbard County is the $263.46. So of the cost of Park Rapids, we would ask Hubbard County to pay that share. If you look at the Hubbard County budget, you can see that that is not the total amount that we would be asking Hubbard County for, because there is also the additional expense of the board, outreach, which is your mobile library. However, we are gonna offset those costs with that county levy buy down. So for Park Rapids, you're not looking at a full 7.1, that 260. The levy we are asking of Park Rapids is 254,887. Overall, over last year, that is a 14% increase. So that's what we're asking for Park Rapids for this year. We do very much welcome your feedback. We've been working with Tom as part of our budget committee and as part of our KRLS board to try to get these down to reasonable levels that we think our partners would be able to agree to. But I'm not fully aware of your financial situation. I'm not fully aware of what support you'd like to provide to your library. So we are very much welcoming your feedback. So you'll get the officially distributed version after the July 20th board meeting. We ask that you let us know kind of what you're thinking about that, what kind of feedback you may have. We want to try to get that feedback quickly so that we can kind of go ahead and make those changes and get revised drafts to you. But we understand that this is kind of a drawn out process. Usually the cities and counties have to have all their levies fully divvied out by December, right? So I realize there may be some time in there for adjustments. And then the Kitchigami board votes to fully approve it in January of '24. So we have time to make adjustments. We have time to discuss it. We have time to come up with plans. But this is our initial draft, and we very much welcome your feedback. So you can always pass that along through Tom to me and to the Kitchigami board as a whole. You can also feel free to contact me directly. I did leave my contact information on the last slide there, as well as giving you my card. The last slide also has the contact information for Jody Schultz, who is the branch manager of the Park Rapids Library. If it's something very branch specific, you may do a better job asking her. You can also always ask me any questions that you have, and if it's something I need to ask Jody, I'll just go ask her. We got a good relationship. So welcome in your feedback, welcome in your questions. Is there anything I can help with?
Melissa?
Yes.
The 254,887 request for the county. Does that include the $28,941 reduced levy?
That is correct, yes. So that's the county total that you see a couple lines over, that 340, 333, minus the city levy of Park Rapids, minus the contribution from the county levy buy-down program, minus that RLTA contribution, equals your county levy, correct?
Okay. I didn't see the 28,941.
Oh, I see, yeah, so anything that we're pulling out of our reserves to contribute, we put at the bottom, because we want to give you real costs at the top, so you see what it is,
Okay.
and then we reduce it from there,
All right,
yes.
thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't know if the other commissioners remember, yeah, that buy down is coming out of the excess reserves that the library had, which was quite significant. And that's a program we can't just keep doing. We're gradually reducing it. Remember last year, the increase request from the county was only 3%. We did that for all cities and counties, and now we're bringing that buy down, less, because eventually we will have those reserves spent.
So the current plan is to run this through 2028. So this year is 80% of the previous, then 60% of the then 40, then 20. So it'll be 100% overall. I think the full amount that Kitchigami's putting forward is about $280,000 across all the counties, something like that. But yeah, we currently have plans to continue that through 2028 and kind of a diminishing value.
So what's been your typical levy increase over the years?
Oh boy, it varies so much. It varies so much because we kind of look at our own costs, which are going to be, of course, rising staff costs, rising insurance costs, rising costs of operating our mobile library. But there's lots of years where we kind of go out and see what we can get, and some years we can't get anything. So we sort of rely on the feedback of our partners for that. So average is hard to say. I think 7% is fairly high based on the amounts that we've seen previous. But I also would say that I'm an administrator who is working hard to get our staff what they need, where I think previous administrations had been okay with saying, like, that's all we got, sorry, So there's lots of places where, say, somebody was at 19 hours, because if you get 20, then you get insurance. And I'm like, let's take care of our people. You're 1 hour away from getting insurance. Let's get you insurance. Like, I want to retain staff and keep staff and have happy people working in my library. So I think this is like a fairly higher than average, I would say, but it just depends. It just depends on the year. I know like in 2008, we were looking at like nothing from nobody kind of increase, you know.
Because, yeah, 14% can't come at you every year.
No, 100%, sir, absolutely. And this is our first start, which is branch managers, what do you need from me? How much will that cost? Let me see if I can get it for you. You know what I mean? So if this is something where it's like that, 14% is not in the cards. You need to talk me down to X number. And then I can talk with the branch managers about prioritizing those needs, finding other ways to make it happen, or perhaps delaying some of those until we're in a better financial situation to help with that. So this is our, if you could have anything in the world, what would you want? And they're so modest and making such light
Well,
asks.
we'd all answer 0 to that. But
No
that's-
lie, I know, but those staff won't put up with the 0% forever and ever and ever, so you know how that goes.
Any more questions? Okay.
All right, well, otherwise, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate you giving me the opportunity to come and speak with you on the budget, and I very much welcome your feedback between now and December. All right, have a great rest of your day.
You too. Okay, Hubbard County Extension Office is next.
Right, well, thank you for the opportunity to join you again. I was here recently, but I'm Lisa Logren from Extension. I'm here to introduce Tara Young. Tara's our Extension Educator in Agriculture and Natural Resources, or A&R as we call it. Currently, Tara coordinates the Master Gardener Program. She provides education on a variety of topics to the community. She partners with various organizations, including 4-H is one of them, where she provides, she's helped educate youth, and I'll let her tell the other wonderful stories, but she's doing a lot of wonderful programming right now. She was hired 2 years ago at a .35 FTE appointment, which was 14 hours per week. And part of the reason that we had to keep her at 14 was because she's a graduate student. And so Tara she'll be finishing up her graduate work in June of 2024, and in July of 2024, she will have the capacity to be able to increase programming. So she's here today to share some of the great work that she's been doing, as well as to give some suggestions throughout some opportunities that, if we wanted to increase programming, she's got some great ideas based off of feedback. Also joining me is A&R Program Leader Sarah Chur, and I'm going to leave after this so Sarah can come up. But Sarah is our A&R Program Leader. She is one of 2 A&R Program Leaders who have statewide responsibilities, and she joins us from the Andover Regional Office. That works. Thank you. All right. Sarah's worked with many counties. She covers a large variety of programming as well as different options for counties. I mean, she really cares about how to figure out ways so that counties can invest in the right amount for their counties and make it work. And so in your packet, you're going to see a report from Tara that talks about what she's been doing the last couple of years, as well as some ideas for future programming. And then there's another sheet that I've included with budget numbers for all of our staff, and that's at various options as far as investment. So I'm going to turn it over to Tara, and scoot over for Sarah. So.
We have a whole crowd. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you all. I had the opportunity a couple weeks ago at the last extension committee meeting, and I did a very similar report there just because it's coming up on 2 years that I've been here. I don't know how it's gone that quickly, actually, but, and also my graduate program, how has that gone by so quickly, too? So 2 years up in August, I think, is the anniversary that will be, and I just wanted to give a report on what I had been working on at a .35, 14 hours a week. I'd say maybe sometimes more than 14 hours a week, if I'm to be honest, but I do really think that it's a valuable experience, because instead of looking at, okay, what could be done, I'm actually here doing the work and then actually being immersed in the programming and thinking of all these opportunities and things that I know I have to restrain myself, and Sarah does a great job at keeping me in check. She's like, "Are you doing 14 hours?" And so that's kind of how I've been working on these last 2 years. But a few of the high points that I wanted to talk about was the pollinator education. That's something that my predecessor, Sally Shearer, had worked on a lot in this area, and it's a big buzzword when you think of pollinators and pollinator habitat, and that's just something I've just run with. I think I've already had that audience, so she's done great work giving me that foundation. And I did a how can I help pollinators? Do you want to do honeybees? Do you want to help native pollinators? And those are kind of the two groups that I've been working with. The people that, like the Kents, that you might know it here in Park Rapids, we had a field day with them, and a hands-on field day where I stood back and took pictures because I didn't want anything to do with the bees. But that's the picture right here. That was last June. Really hands-on. We had the apiculture educator come up from the cities, who is great hands-on with working with the bees without gloves. I don't know how she does it, but so that was one of the hands-on programs, and that was still, people were getting back after COVID, and I think that was interesting to see how people reacted after maybe a year or so of not having in-person programs, and they're like, we can really get hands-on again and start getting into these programs. I know some of my colleagues have been having trouble getting people back into programming after COVID. I don't know if that's just something that maybe people got out of the routine, but that's one thing that I really found out here, was that people are really interested in actually attending these programs. Sometimes people will say that they want to attend things and then they don't show up, but that is one thing that I've had experience with. I was a full-time educator in a different county, and the numbers of the people that actually attend, I have been pleasantly surprised, actually. Really, I've had 2 programs that I've had to find different venues or find ways to separate the programs because there was too many people that would attend. Like, for example, on another page, I did a food preservation class, 123 people in Park Rapids. I was not expecting that. So I had to do 2 different sessions, had to change the venue like 3 times, but that was a really popular class too. And I'm also working on a foraging in the forest class up at Itasca, and I'm up to 53 people registered for that. So that will be an interesting walk through the forest with a group of 53 people, but we're making it work. So kind of wrapping up the pollinator education, I also talk about the pollinator habitat. People, I think, tend to learn a lot of these things, and I don't know if they actually apply it, and that's something that I've been learning through the University of Minnesota Extension, was how do we know that people are actually applying these things in these communities? It's one thing to learn about it, and people are interested, and they like attending these different programs, but are we actually making the changes that we're hoping to see? So that's something that I've been working on, and hopefully that will incentivize people to send me pictures, at least, of things that they've been working on, hopefully throughout the summer. The Master Gardener program I also coordinate. We have 12 Master Gardeners and 3 new Master Gardener interns this year, and a big thing has just been the financial account management. There's been some transitions with the Master Gardener funds, so doing more involved with that. We do have a relatively small program, but compared to counties of our size, I think we have a fairly robust program that I think people in the community know Master Gardeners. Sometimes they're like, what is a Master Gardener? But when I do say, oh, that person's one of my Master Gardeners, they're like, ooh, I want to come to an event with them. So we've done Plant a Basket, which is at Flying W Gardens, where people come in and plant a basket, but also get education on it. The Garden Stroll that will be coming up here this next Saturday. We've done work with 4-H, and we're doing a hands-on dividing perennials workshop this fall too. I prefer the hands-on workshops instead of just sitting in front of a presentation, and I think the majority of other people agree about that, so that's usually what I try to do. On the second page here, the Soil and Water Conservation District collaboration, they have been welcoming, me with open arms since the day I started, really. I think it's a natural collaboration. It just fits naturally with really their expertise and my background too, because I have a background in beef cattle and forages, and I'm getting my master's degree in agronomy, so it does really fit with the soils, the soil fertility, the forages. So I spoke at their last two grazing workshops, and that's been really nice because just being at a part-time, I wouldn't be able to do that, to host that large of a program, because they really help me tremendously. And so then I just get to come and talk and teach people, so sometimes that's the fun part too. They also did a tree sales seminar and then part of their local water management plan meetings. Other local programs that I kind of just did one-off when I was able to receive feedback from the Extension Committee. Everyone on the Extension Committee is incredibly supportive of me and my position, and they give me great ideas too. So sometimes too many, so I have to kind of prioritize and pick which ones. But like this food preservation class that I did, that was incredibly popular. So I put a few of the stats here. I really wanted to see if people were going to preserve like their own food, and if that's a route that I wanted to take for future programming. Do people need to learn how to grow their own food in order to preserve? Or are people buying local food? Do they know that they can buy local food? Where can they buy local food? So sometimes you uncover, with one program, you uncover a lot of other opportunities when you just do one. You're like, oh, this could go down a rabbit hole really quickly. Those were some of the stats there from 123 attendees. That church was packed. We also did an aquatic invasive species class. I was able to bring in two educators from the Twin Cities that were specialized in aquatic invasive species. I thought that pertained to this area really well. So we had 12 people at Northwoods come, and that was a really hands-on experience too. So that's kind of something that I like to say is, even if I'm not an expert in all of these things, because I don't think one person could be an expert in all these different areas. I know the really smart people to bring in, because I wouldn't be able to teach all of these things. But the aquatic invasive species, I learned a lot too, because I knew nothing about that. So we do have an upcoming foraging in the forest, like I talked about at Itasca State Park. I'm having an agroforestry educator come from the University of Minnesota, but we're also partnering with Connie Cox up at Itasca State Park. So that's what I really wanted, was someone who was here locally to identify these different plants and mushrooms and things. So kind of have the hands-on experience. We'll be walking through Itasca, so people are really excited about that, to identify different things. You can see that I learn a lot of these programs too, once I actually do them. Also, the annual Farm Family Award, we'll be doing that at the county fair here this next Saturday. So this year, it's the Morgan family. Last year, the Yennies. So yeah, it's really nice, a nice recognition to be able to present that award to them. And I think in Hubbard County, we don't have a lot of the traditional farmers, so a lot of the past Farm Families of the Year have been the non-traditional, like the Blueberry Farm or the Morgan family that have a small CSA and dehydrate their own food. So yeah. And a big part of my 14 hours, I guess you'd say, probably about 50% of my time is spent on the technical assistance. We do have quite a bit of technical assistance coming in, questions that people, a lot of times I answer the phone and they're like, I don't know how I finally got to you, but I'm so glad that you answered my question, because I didn't know who to ask. And I think that's a big thing in a lot of counties, because people are like, well, I don't know if we have a county agent anymore. And I'm like, yeah, that's essentially what I do. So I think there's a lot of people like, these questions, I don't know where to ask. So when they finally do reach me, they're like, oh, good, I found the right person. So I just have a couple of inquiry topics that I've seen. Improving pastures, varietal selection for zone 3s, that's a big thing for up here. And weed and insect identification and control, soil tests, which is great for my background, because I've looked at a lot of soil tests and I can really help people off the fly, more so than looking in a book and helping them. So I can help them when we're out looking at their fields or their gardens. So wildlife habitats have been big, woodland management, pollinator habitats have been really hot topic. So when people call and ask, sometimes it's an hour conversation because, oh yeah, I forgot that I had a question about this, or I should ask you about this while I have you on the phone. So just a few technical assistance things, blister beetles, poison ivy, and I think there's a lot of things that I can help people with, and with site visits, and I have only been able to do 3 site visits during my time here just because of that. I usually get there and then they ask me 40 other questions. So that's something that I've had to try to dial back, but they're still really fun to do. Communications, one of the best things that I think I can do with my limited time is spread information out to a lot of people regarding a lot of different topics. So things like the newsletters, or I have an e-newsletter that I send out every other month, or try to, because there's a lot of information that I want to share with people. But it's usually 400 views per edition, so let me know if anyone wants wants to be added to that, because my 4-H educator partner, she's like, it's like the hidden gem. I'm like, I'm not trying to hide it, so if there's anyone that's interested in that. But we do a lot of different topics and anything that I think is relevant to Hubbard County. And I also ask people what they're interested in when they sign up. So, and I have monthly news articles that I write to the Park Rapids Enterprise, and I submit to all the local news releases or newspapers. And another thing that I worked on that was kind of off the fly, we actually had an educator, a regional educator specializing in vegetables and fruits production. She had received a grant and wanted local educator help to get on farm and do these. It was $135 worth of soil analysis. It was quite an extensive soil analysis, but they really wanted to see how they can help small vegetable producers. So we had 2 that I knew of in Hubbard County. So I was able to go out there and do all these tests for them, still getting a few of them back. But I know there was a couple of producers in adjacent counties, in Beltrami and Cass counties, that just because they didn't have a local educator, there was no one to do these tests for them. So yeah, so we had Carters and Weisses that were able to benefit from that. So possibilities for the future. This was something that I think driving down to the Twin Cities a lot, I have a lot of time to think when I go down to class, and kind of brainstorming what the possibilities look like, because I actually was able to be immersed in this position, so I know a little bit more, I would think, about what kind of needs there are in the community, and then also getting feedback from the County Extension Committee has been really helpful in addressing which priorities should be focused on. So looking at the potential future programs, just generally, I was thinking the adult and youth education in gardening, agriculture, and natural resources, an extension of what I have been doing. But I also think the small farms and self-sustainable agriculture, I think, would be a really key component moving forward, because those are the questions that I'm getting is, okay, after COVID, sometimes you don't really know how the world's going to work, and you just want to be able to be more self-sufficient. And that's how I think that's a trend that's coming up, and that's here to stay. It seems like it wasn't just after COVID. People are actually getting into this lifestyle of, I have a few cattle, and I have some pigs, and I have some chickens, and how do I continue to provide for my family or my neighbors, maybe make it into a business. And I think that's sometimes it takes those conversations to make sure that people know that that's a legitimate way of life and a legitimate business. And there's a lot of things that go into that. So something like the Small Farm Startup School is something that the extension we've provided for a few years in other counties, and it's definitely a large time commitment, because it was an 8-session in person, and I bring in all these different educators in all these different areas of fruit and small ruminants and woodlands and in the ag business management. So there's a lot of components that go into this, and that's why I've hesitated taking on a project like this, just with that limited time. But I really think that would be something that people here would be really interested in, even if they're just homesteading for their own families. But also, when I talked at the food preservation class, I had people raise their hands. I'm like, who would be interested in doing this as a a business venture, and there was quite a few hands up. So I'm like, oh, maybe there would be more people that would be interested in capitalizing on this. So that was I think would probably be like the biggest priority if looking into the possibilities for the future. Also, working like on farm safety days, we have where it says 33 children are injured in an agricultural related incident, and that is way too many. One is one too many, but something that I thought would be interesting and applicable to the people of Hubbard County too. So working with 4-H, I've already worked with, but also with FFA, the local FFA chapters. I actually went to school with the FFA teacher in Park Rapids, or in undergrad too, so I already know her. So that's a great connection. Also the Master Woodland Steward Program is a 15-week program, one of those larger, bigger programs that I've had a couple of Hubbard County residents ask me about. Are you going to bring it here? I'm like, we'll see. So I'll just give you resources in the meantime, but I think a more immersive experience would be better for a lot of these people, instead of here, read an article, or I'll tell you the little bit that I know about woodland stewardship. And a few other examples, I was going off on all these different ideas. Once you start thinking about the possibilities, sometimes they're endless. Pasture walks, field days, food preservation classes, things like that, so you could read those. But those were just some ideas, definitely open to many more if that's what I think is so diverse. There's a lot of different things that my position can do, and in my position looks very different from a lot of my colleagues just because we're in a different area than we are in, say, southern Minnesota. So that's why I really take a lot of the input from the county extension committees, and really that drives where my priorities go. So, and also from really talking with people in the community. So it's a nice way to, when people are asking me questions, so I want to bounce this idea off of you. Is this something you'd be interested in? So those are just a few possibilities that I had thought. But were there any questions for me, what I've been up to for the last 2 years?
Oh, you do a lot with 14 hours.
Yeah.
And I would offer that perhaps she's not always at 14 hours.
Okay.
It's fun work. It really is. I get paid to help people and learn myself. So it is really fun.
If I could add just a few things. Again, my name is Sarah Chur. I am Tara's supervisor. I serve as a program leader with Extension. You have a gem here, and it was really serendipity that brought her to this position. So previously, Tara was one of our full-time educators in another county over in northeast Minnesota. She decided to go to grad school at the same moment that we were looking for someone to fill a part-time position here. You all know that you moved to an MOA for this. Her skills perfectly meet, I believe, what you're looking for here, in that she really has this diversification. She comes with this soil health, plant science, livestock, forages, horticulture. I should add that she was a member of our All Across Extension, our Dean's Team Award last year for a program she did with colleagues across the state called Gardening from the Ground Up. And so her teaching ability, when you moved from a Master Gardener program coordinator to an extension educator, you gained the ability to have someone do technical assistance, to do teaching, as well as to continue to coordinate volunteers and to really build that Master Gardener program. So as she comes to the end of her graduate program, I think over the last year or two, we've really thought about what's next in Hubbard County. There's been some discussion with Beltrami County about partnering. I don't believe that's currently on the table. We think that there is both a need, as evidenced by the work Tara's been doing and the additional inquiries she's getting, to increase her time. She is also available to increase her time. And my hope is that Hubbard County gets to benefit from continuing to have Tara on board going forward. And so I don't know if you want to talk about the proposed time, or if you want me to do that.
Yeah, I'm happy to do that. So there is another sheet that I included in your packet. And I listed all of our staff on here just so you could kind of get an idea of the total, but the first graph would be for 2023, and all of the staff are the same across the board, except for I have changed Tara's FTE to the first column is if she was at 0.35 the entire year for 2024. The next column is if we increased her to 0.5 beginning in July. The next column would be if we increased to 0.75, 0.8, and then 1.0, just to give you an idea of what those numbers look like. I also included on the second graph would be what those numbers may look like for 2025, because then it would be for the full year and not half of the year. This doesn't include the new MOA rates though, so those get negotiated soon and will be, the new MOA starts in 2025. So we'll be talking about that spring of 2024. But I didn't want to give you the numbers for half a year and then not be honest about the numbers for the full year. So.
And one of the things I would add is that going forward at 0.5 or above, we will need to do a search for the position. I believe we have a really strong candidate in the room, but we would need to do a search for that. And we recently, in Otter Tail County this spring, we did a search for a 0.4 position. It was a failed search. And so we went back to the drawing board, and there are some partnering situations going on, but we are interviewing tomorrow over in Otter Tail for a 1.0 position. I would strongly suggest that if you want to continue on this path, 0.8, 4 days a week would be a really good idea. I would humbly request that you really consider going to a full-time position in order to fully capture the benefits of having Tara or someone in the extension educator position. So that is really our request, and hope that you will consider that.
Any questions?
I'll just comment that I've had a lot of positive feedback with about Tara and that, and she's an asset.
Was that position combined in the past with other counties, or was it always just Hubbard?
So when Sally was here, Sally was on an 11-hour-a-week position.
Years ago, there was an extension educator position.
Will, yeah.
Yeah,
Was he
correct.
combined with other counties?
I don't think so.
It was with Becker County.
Oh,
I
it
believe.
was?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
that was before my time.
I'm just wondering if that's a possibility for
I'm
getting the full
not,
time.
I'm not sure that Becker is interested. There are, again, Beltrami has expressed interest in the past. Perhaps not a 50-50 split, but there might be some room there.
So who's Otter Tail pairing with, or working with?
So it is a pilot. It's really the first time we've done this. They are working jointly with East Otter Tail and Wadena County SWCD. And so it makes it a little bit more complex, but we're really hopeful that that's going to go well. So that's certainly something to think about. I think Tara's skills are really well matched for the things, SWCD has, regenerative agriculture, really thinking about that sustainability and conservation.
Yeah, I was a little surprised, my short little time here on the extension committee so far, that how much demand there is. I would have never guessed, but
Me too.
there's a lot of interest. So, we should try to match that to some degree, because that's what the people are interested in.
Yeah.
It would be great if we could partner and generate some revenue from another county somewhere to help with that a little bit, because not only that, but it'd make the classes and stuff more robust too, more
Right.
participation.
Right, yeah.
Okay, well, appreciate you coming.
Thank
I
you
learned
so
a lot
much.
here. All right, thanks. Well, let's see, next we have Juvenile Detention Alternatives Initiative.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, good morning, thanks for having us.
Morning.
Good to see you. We are here to talk to you all about the Juvenile Detention Alternative Initiative. I want to have an opportunity for each of us to at least introduce ourselves so you know who you're speaking to, and then we'll kind of just dive right into it. We want to give you kind of a brief background of what JDAI is, if you haven't heard it before, kind of let you know what's happening up here in our region, as well as for Hubbard County, and then really just talk about the work moving forward. So we'll let you start, Chris.
I'm Christopher Stolen. I'm the Northern Region JDAI coordinator, representing 8 counties in the Northern Region, including Hubbard County. Just take a brief moment to thank Commissioner Van Kempen for being the point of contact, helping us get here today. So.
Katrina Dexter, I'm the state JDAI coordinator.
And Curtis Shanklin, I just previously held the role as Deputy Commissioner for the Minnesota Department of Corrections, where I oversee our Reintegration and Restorative Services Division. So we had a Deputy Commissioner overseeing facilities. Everything on the reentry side was within my purview. Previous state JDI coordinator, and long before that, me, Katrina, were probation agents within this field, I think a long time ago. So really appreciate your all time this morning. Thank you.
Yeah, you got 3 past probation agents sitting in front of you. So folks who have worked directly in the system have now come to the other side of the continuum and really started to think about how can we get better outcomes for youth. So what is JDAI? JDAI is the Juvenile Detention Alternative Initiative, started in 1992 by the Annie E. Casey Foundation. The owner of UPS wanted to get into some philanthropy work, really was interested in combating the detention facility population that we had at the time in the 90s. This was the super predator days, so we had a lot of juvenile detention facilities here in Minnesota as well as across the nation that was at capacity, over capacity for juveniles in detention. And so the owner of UPS started the Annie Casey Foundation, and one of the first things that they did was JDAI. So it's been over 25 years in our nation. It's in over 42 states and 300 jurisdictions across the nation. It's been the most replicated juvenile justice reform effort to date, and that's true for here in Minnesota. So we started in 2005 in Minnesota with 3 pilot sites, Hennepin, Dakota, and Ramsey. At that time, Dakota County was looking at having to build a new juvenile detention facility because of the numbers they had in their facility. After implementing JDAI, the core strategies of JDAI, they were able to not have to have that expense to their county, and really able to shift kind of how they think about kids and how they were working with kids. And that's true of all of our JDAI sites. So we have worked across this state. We have represent the most urban jurisdiction, Hennepin County, and some of our most rural jurisdictions, which is part of the Northern Region. When Curtis and I were doing this work, prior to Curtis taking his other role at the DOC, we were really thinking, how do we actually address rural populations? I'm from International Falls, Minnesota, so I'm a little bit biased in this. And I really felt like we really need to make sure that justice by geography, making sure that our most rural jurisdictions have same opportunities to our most urban jurisdictions. But we also knew that there needed to be shared accountability and shared success because we have much smaller populations up here. And so really started thinking about a multi-jurisdictional approach. Historically, JDI sites have been 1 county, 1 jurisdiction. And so we started thinking about, in our more rural jurisdictions, what made sense for the jurisdiction and what is going to be most helpful for those jurisdictions. And so we came up with the multi-jurisdictional approach. The Northern Region is encompassing of 8 counties: Cass, Clearwater, Hubbard, Kitson, Lake of the Woods, Mahnomen, Pennington, Roseville. Did I miss anyone? I think I got them all. And so brought you all on between the years of 2016 and 2017, I believe. And then at the same time, we brought on the Leech Lake Band of Ojibwe. They are the only tribal nation in the nation that is their stand-alone JDAI site. So there are 2 other tribal nations that do this work as well, but they sit at counties, and they're a collaborative partner. We really felt it was important to let the tribal nation really drive this work and see who they wanted to have at their table. And so they're the first tribal nation in the nation here in Minnesota. And so we have numerous JDI sites across the state. And really the goal of JDAI is to make sure that your juvenile justice and child welfare systems are looking at data and research and making decisions based on those models. It's really about making sure you have the right kids in the right place at the right time. So here in Minnesota, about 75% of the kids who come through our juvenile justice system are for those Part 2 crimes or status offenses. So those lower, lesser crimes, not those, not the Part 1 offenses, which are your more serious offenses. So the vast majority of kids you have coming through your juvenile justice system can be handled in a way that doesn't include secure detention or long-term out-of-home placement, which we know costs a lot to counties and tribal nations, right? And so how do we think differently about addressing the needs and the risks of those youth, making sure we're upholding public safety, which is one of our values. So across everything we do, we look at public safety, and really making sure that as you're working as a collaborative, which is what JDI builds, it comes into your jurisdiction, it helps you build a collaborative for, so all your system stakeholders, I always say from the school to the judiciary, everyone in between, you want sitting at that table to make core decisions about the kids in your jurisdiction together and holistically. So you not only do that on the local level, so you all have a JDI collaborative, which the commissioner participates in. We also have a Northern Region board, and so there's participation from each of the Northern Region counties. There's a spot on there for 2 stakeholders and a judiciary from each jurisdiction, and then they collaborate as a whole. So leveraging resources to come to the area, making sure that we're thinking strategically across jurisdictional lines. If we're investing in an ATD, doing that as a group instead of it falling on one jurisdiction. And so really thinking differently up here in the Northern Region, making sure we're thinking as a group, because we know the numbers are smaller, but the need is just as much. And so really JDAI is focused on those core elements, but we really, the state leads the work. So Minnesota State JDAI is what really drives the work, but the local jurisdiction is doing the work. So we don't come in and say, hey, Hubbard County, you need to do these 5 things. It's really about creating the space for Hubbard County to say, these are the things we really want to look at. These are the areas we want to focus. One year you may be focusing on one thing. The other year you might be focusing on something different that's specific to your jurisdiction. So there's a model, but we want it to be really tailored to your local jurisdiction. Did I miss anything?
County board resolution.
Oh, yes. So Minnesota's a little bit different in a couple areas. We have a requirement when you come on to do this work that there's a county board resolution or a tribal council resolution to come on to do this work. So I think your county board resolution, if I'm remembering, was in 2017?
I think so.
And so the county board, we came and presented to the county board at that time. I actually think Mark Bloomquist was probably the one who presented the board, rest in peace. And so we were very thankful of the support of this jurisdiction to come on to do this work. And so we have continued that work since this time. We require that of every jurisdiction. So all of our jurisdictions in the state have a county board resolution or a tribal council resolution. Minnesota's a little bit different in 2 other areas. We have 9 core strategies. The national model has 8. We have 9. We added an additional core strategy of community. Community is a huge resource to us, especially in our more rural jurisdictions. My parents were business owners growing up, and I remember everyone and their brother coming over to ask for something, right? That's how it is in smaller jurisdictions. If you ask, people will come and really be a part of that. And so community is a huge resource. It's an untapped resource for our juvenile justice and child welfare systems. The other and third thing is that we don't just think about JDAI as a juvenile justice issue. We really think holistically across the juvenile jurisdiction. And so we think of child welfare and juvenile justice as equal partners at the table. And so we really try to make sure, especially in the Northern Region, we've had really great buy-in from social services and schools. And so we really don't just focus on that juvenile detention, juvenile probation. Anything else? Chris, I'll turn it over to you. I know you have some specific things in the Northern Region. I'll probably cap off if I think of anything after, and then we'll kind of turn it over for questions.
Thanks. So again, I'm Christopher Stolen, the Northern Region JDAI coordinator. So first I'd like to discuss sort of what we're doing here in the Northern Region. Right now we've been working with a work group out of Roseau regarding juvenile risk assessment instrument. So a risk assessment instrument is essentially a tool that helps us evaluate the level of risk a young person poses to public safety on a point-based system surrounding criminal history and any alleged offense youth might have committed at the point of law enforcement contact. So by implementing such an instrument, we can make a more informed decision about appropriate interventions and placement options for youth, ensuring we're taking into account their individual needs and circumstances. So using that instrument, it allows us to allocate resources effectively, targeting those who require the most attention, but also providing alternatives to detention for lower risk youth, like Katrina had mentioned earlier, those status offense youth. So through that approach, we can prioritize community-based interventions and funding and reducing the unnecessary use of secure detention for those youth. Secondly, I'd like to highlight the opportunities for grant funding that align with our detention alternatives initiatives. So there's numerous federal, state, and private grant programs like the OJP, Office of Justice programs through the Department of Justice at the federal level, the state of Minnesota at the state level, and other funding opportunities around the state, locally and privately, to being able to support those the innovative and evidence-based approaches to juvenile justice in the area. So by actively seeking and applying for these grants and seeking out help within counties, those who have experience with applying for grants and being able to house a grant within a specific county, so we can accrue additional resources to enhance our capacity to be able to implement effective detention alternatives. So those funds can be utilized to expand community-based programs, investing in diversion initiatives, providing more comprehensive services for at-risk youth, like chemical and mental health treatment, and improving the overall functioning of the juvenile justice system within the county. So grant funding really plays a vital role in sustaining and expanding the success of JDAI efforts. And lastly, I want to emphasize the significance of participation in local collaboratives. Like Katrina had mentioned, we do have local collaborative meetings within each county. Most recently, Commissioner Van Kempen was the only participant in that meeting, so we're trying to nail down how we can really boost participation, really bring everyone to the table. So the success of the initiative really relies on strong partnerships and collaboration among the multi-system stakeholder model, such as law enforcement, the courts, probation, community organizations, health and human services, and any other relevant entities that might have a stake in the juvenile justice system, which allows us to really leverage diverse perspectives and expertise across the system. So the collaboratives really foster communication, coordination, and information sharing, leading to more efficient and effective practices within the juvenile justice system. By really engaging with the local collaborative, we can really more collectively develop and implement strategies that will more effectively address the root causes of juvenile delinquency and promoting more positive outcomes for youth and reducing unnecessary detention. So that's pretty much what we're doing right now in the northern region.
Yeah,
Is
the
there
only
anything I
thing,
missed?
no, the only thing I would add is, one of the things about a multi-jurisdictional approach, as well as our collaboration with the Leech Lake Band of Ojibwe, is about getting resources to the area. If you have one jurisdiction that sends 20 kids to detention a year, you got one jurisdiction that says 5, you got another jurisdiction that sends 50, it's really hard to get services to each of those individual jurisdictions, right? But if we can put the population together, when you're applying for grants, when you're leveraging folks to open groups, that many of have died, especially during COVID, we have the population then when we're thinking on a multi-jurisdictional approach. It's a different leveraging point when we can do it as a team. One of the things of collaboration I'm really excited about is the Leech Lake Band of Ojibwe is leading an ATD work group, so a work group that's looking specifically at alternatives to detention, and they've invited Hubbard County into that meeting. So Chris sits in there, one of the probation directors sits in there as well, and it's really about brainstorming alternatives to detention for our area. One thing we're working on right now is a shelter proposal. So actually shelter beds, we know that it's a huge issue if you don't have a place to put a kid, right? Sometimes they need a place to go for the night. They need a safe place. And so shelter is one of those things we're looking at. Respite foster care is a huge piece of it. This has been a good ATD in other jurisdictions, but it's really about just creating a model that works for the local jurisdiction. And then also mentorship. It's been a piece of the work that I think we know can link into a lot of the long-term services that people are in. So you have your chemical dependency provider, you have your mental health provider. Sometimes those come and go. And so mentorship is a way to really establish a rooting in the community especially with folks that we know are leaders in your community already, and making sure the kids have that positive outlet. And so looping that into kind of the other services that they're getting as well. And so those are a couple of the core things that we've been working on, but collaboration is what really drives that work. And so, you know, we really came to this table after having a conversation with the commissioner and figuring out how can we have Hubbard County really recommitted to this work. There's been a lot of turnover. There's been folks who unfortunately have left us, and COVID. It's the reality of it. And so really looking to have that recommitment to this work. The state has really supported this work up in the northern region for quite some time. So the state has funded your coordinator. It's funded through Roseau County, but the agreement is that they work with all the jurisdictions equally. So Chris works with every jurisdiction. He gets the privilege of working with all the jurisdictions and keeping those straight and making sure everyone's on their work plan, as well as the northern region as a whole. And so really, this year, Chris's position is funded for about half the year in your fiscal year. And so we will be looking for a small investment. We're looking at about $10,000 because it's a shared investment, right? That was the other thing that we wanted to think of when we were coming up here. In our long-term JDI sites, you will have a JDI coordinator for that specific county, and the county takes on that work eventually. So really kind of how it works is the state invests on the front end, get everything up and running, and then as the county will take over that position. We have been thinking as we came up here that it did not make sense for each jurisdiction to have their own coordinator. It really made sense to do that multi-jurisdictional approach. And so it's less burden on each individual jurisdiction because there's that shared need for a coordinator, and everyone can kind of put into that position. Much like you were talking about your extension worker from the Minnesota Extension. So kind of the same thought process, right? How can we work collaboratively? So there's not as much burden on each individual jurisdiction, but also when we have successes like getting federal grants, getting local grants, that everyone gets to benefit from that. So really when we're thinking about applying for applications for grants or getting resources into this area, Chris is thinking of the whole jurisdiction and not one jurisdiction. It may make sense in one jurisdiction that they really need something specific, and another jurisdiction they need something different. He's still doing that work as well, but when we're thinking about leveraging resources, we're thinking of everyone as a whole. Questions? Anything I missed, Curtis?
No, I think the only thing that I would just add is we talk about intentionality. So as Katrina mentioned, you know, we were very intentional about coming up, you know, to northern Minnesota, right? Because we wanted to show that this work shouldn't just be centralized, just either around the metro or just one of our largest, you know, counties geographically, like St. Louis County. Particularly think about here in Minnesota where we have a deficiency, whether it's mental health resources or chemical dependency resources. And we know that for many times, some of our smaller jurisdictions, you know, you send a youth to an out-of-home placement to address either one of those issues, it can come as a substantial cost, particularly to your budget, right? So how do we work to collaboratively keep youth locally here, where you can also get the resources that are going to be able to invest in them? More often than not, we see counties, you'll send a youth away for 6-9 months, a year, only for them to have them come back and recidivate within 2 weeks to 2 months, right? And so what's really the return on your investment? So that's the intentionality at which when we wanted to come up here is really how do we expand resources and services outside of the metro? I think that's also one of the significant benefits of hopefully being able to garner your voices to really to continue to drive this work. Because as we continue to do work at the state, as Katrina mentioned, that's able to leverage resources that become a benefit to all of our sites that are within JDAI. So whether it's federal grants, whether it's us doing work at the legislature, whether it's new offices being built, we're at the forefront of telling those funding opportunities. So it gives us an opportunity to leverage our positions to make sure that those resources are coming to our JDAI sites. Even when we're looking at certain things like work groups, whether it's evidence-based standards and things, those groups are typically groups that we have been leading and we will be leading across the state that are statewide. That also gives you all not just a seat, but a voice to be able to really have a voice in how those things are implemented and how standards are set so that you can keep in mind what is best for your jurisdiction and your youth. So just wanted to add that little piece around as we talk about a collaboration and intentionality and the benefit from that. So.
Curtis, you said one term that what came to my head while I was listening was that return on investment. So you're seeing a significant change in the kids so that when they become adults, we don't end up seeing them in our local jail then?
Yeah, well, good question. I mean, and we see this issue within our local jails too for the adults. I go back to that mental health piece and that chemical dependency. So what we are seeing is the more that we can invest, particularly in work like JDI on the front end, then we see a decrease in seeing those youth as they become adults furtherly involved in the system. One thing you'll hear us say is, you'll never hear us say no child should ever be placed in secure confinement. That's just not the reality of it. We've been intense agents when we worked for St. Louis County. We had the responsibility and the authority to place youth in secure confinement ourselves. We've certified youth as adults. We've worked in the adult system. But like you were mentioning, Commissioner, we see too many adults, right, who are overcrowding our jails, right, whether it's for mental health issues, where unfortunately our jails become the dumping grounds, right, because there aren't resources for them. So where do they end up? At our jail. That becomes at a cost. That becomes a strain when we're already talking about a field where we're having issue with staffing levels. So the more that we can continue to invest on that front end, that becomes the investment on the back end, that here in Hubbard, you won't see those adults filling up your jails. I also talk about the return on investment. Katrina mentioned that the state has kind of been leading this from a monetary standpoint. A small investment or an investment from you all, when we talk about leveraging those other state dollars and resources, well, that comes to you all just for the benefit of us being able to leverage our positions to ensure that those resources are getting outside of the metro. It's unfortunate that because it's the biggest counties or you have the most fanciest grant writers, that's where the dollars tend to flow. We've been trying to upset that kind of apple cart while showing that if you continue to invest in the entire state, then you're going to see a decrease and you're going to see the further return on your investment. So as we can continue to invest, I mean, we currently have already leveraged a federal grant that's $1.3 million that we will be using to work with local law enforcement around diversion practices so they can formalize their own diversion. That comes with monetary resources too as well. Our success at the legislature, not during this past session, which was a policy session, but as we come up on a budget year, being able to leverage those resources to also provide an opportunity for further investment into our JDAI sites.
Yeah, one of the things that I'll say that I think is a good linkage, all of our work that we're doing is somehow working to help the kids on the local level. So we applied for a federal grant that was specific to what we call the Minnesota Incentivized Diversion Program. And it's specifically looking at diversion for local law enforcement and county attorneys. One of the recommendations of your systems assessment so when we come into your jurisdiction right away, we do a systems assessment. We analyze your local jurisdiction, we interview all your stakeholders, we analyze your data, and we give you back that information, and we give you recommendations. One of your recommendations was to formalize diversion. Diversion was happening, but it was in very informal ways. And so one of the ways to get better outcomes and have consistency across time, right, is put it in policy and put it into a more formalized way. So regardless of kind of who's in that position, you can change it if you need to, but you make sure that there's consistency over time. This is an opportunity for Hubbard County to really start formalizing that. There is going to be federal funds that's going to be available across the state for the Minnesota Incentivized Diversion Program. So kind of all the work we're doing at the state level is really to try to help the local jurisdictions across the state of Minnesota as well as our tribal partners to get better outcome for kids. And so we're leveraging things on different areas while Chris is leveraging things on other areas that are specific to this as well.
The last thing I'll just add is, like Katrina mentioned, to some degree it's kind of also personal for us who come from small towns. Katrina's from I Falls. I'm from a small town in Mississippi that now that they took the Sonics out of it, you'll go right past 61 and not even know it's there. So for us, it is to some degree personal because we understand what it's like coming up in a smaller town. My town had one stoplight. And so for us, we also know what it's like to kind of be forgotten about at times or only mentioned when it's convenient, for others, right? So for us coming up here, that's why we were intentional about the collaboration and coming up to Northern Minnesota, because to some degree it's a little bit personal for us because we want to make sure that a kid in Rosa or a kid in Hubbard has the same opportunities as a kid in Ramsey and a kid in Dakota County. So,
Questions?
Yes, I do.
yeah.
These issues are presenting themselves earlier and earlier at younger ages. So my specific question is, how do you integrate these programs with schools? And specifically elementary schools, because I happen to be the spouse of a former administrator for 20 years, And I can tell you, these things are presenting themselves at much younger ages. And if you want to prevent adults from being in jail and the overburdened status we have right now in probation even, we have to get at them earlier and earlier. And there has to be something done.
Yeah.
And I don't know what that looks like. I know you guys did that study a while back, but that would be more my specific question, because that's the one place where you have contact and you can identify these problems early enough to actually make a difference. But what is the buy-in of the schools on this too, and what's that look like?
Yeah, that's a good question, and I think as Chris mentioned, it's also talking about you all being able to use your leverage and your voice, right? Like the collaborative, like Katrina said, is full of all of those stakeholders. So school has to be at the table, to your point, Commissioner, because more often than not, you can identify these things early on, whether through truancy, whether it's starting at suspension. That's why we've been one of the things we've pushed is looking at how do you identify these things earlier, whether it's looking at when you maybe heard us talk about raising the age of delinquency, right? The reason why we look to do that is because that way you can have more intentionality. If a kid, say at 10 years old, goes into the delinquency system, if they have a public defender, they don't have to have any interaction with the family. It's just between that youth, that public defender, and what they have going on. If you raise the age, now you can open up some type of, whether it's social services case, some type of CHIPS case, so that you have to work directly with the family. So that way you're looking at what's actually driving the behavior. I just tend to think no child wakes up one day and says, you know what, I just want to become a menace to society. More often than not, it's driven by the influences and things that are happening directly within that family. So you have to be able to go in and work with the family. And sometimes, that isn't done in a way where it's welcoming or you get the invite. But if you start to identify those behaviors, then you can start to then look to say, how do we look at wraparound services, or how do you get social services involved so that you can identify what is the root cause and look to how do you deliver resources at an early on by also identifying those other areas that might be components that are leading to that particular behavior.
Because that's kind of what I mean by integrate, because you're starting to see more and more serious behavioral problems at young ages, and the teachers aren't trained for this.
Yep.
The administrators aren't trained for this, and there just seems to be this void right now, unless you have, a level 3 or a level 4 center that you can remove the behavioral problem and get them the special training, trained staff that they need to make a difference. There's this big void there right now, and unfortunately it's disrupting the regular education environment, and it's sucking a lot of oxygen out of the room.
Absolutely.
And that has an effect on everybody then.
And I can tell you know this well because you mentioned the level 3 and level 4 schools that kids end up going to. But go ahead.
I would just say, our most successful JDAI sites that have been able to actually think strategically like that is through collaboration. So making sure you do have all the schools at the table, making sure social services at the table, probation, right? If we, community service providers, you all have a great mental health continuum at your availability in this jurisdiction, if we can leverage it in the right? I mean, a lot of times the adults suck up all the air in the room and the kids don't get enough space, right? So the collaborative table is what carves that out and says, no, we're gonna come here and as a group, we're going to think differently about how we address these issues. And it's about getting all those people at the table to say, we're all committed to do that in what I can do in my silo so that we can all work toward this longer out-term goal, because that's absolutely right. Especially after COVID, teachers are having to deal with behaviors in school that unfortunately, if they are not addressed in a family-focused, pro-social way, are going to end up in our justice system, and we're going to see them in our out-of-home placement numbers eventually, right? And we know how much that costs on the back end. So if we can, as a collaborative, think about how we can creatively work together, that's where you're going to get the most bang for your buck.
The frustrating part is we're paying either way. No matter how you slice it, it's just a matter of when you're going to pay.
Yep.
And sometimes it's cheaper to pay
On the
with
front.
intervention than it is to pay later. You can do that through regional collaboration, like you're kind of doing here, and create a regional center, but that's expensive to bus students if you have to, back and forth. I always thought, some sort of on-campus solution for a school would be a good alternative, where you have the one or two specially trained teacher that knows how to deal with these things, and then you're flexible because it might just be for a portion of the day, or whatever it might be. You're not sending them on a bus to a special center,
Right.
all day long,
Yeah.
which is expensive.
And I think
You're
that's
keeping them integrated, and you're getting them the services they need.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, I think that's the good thing about, again, being able to know that's specific and that is something that would be a benefit here, to Hubbard, right? And so then how can we, again, leverage our positions to sit here and know, as you talk about this, say, okay, what would be the cost to have something? What does that look like? Knowing that burden shouldn't fall, directly on just Hubbard County. So now that us being able to know that information, that gives us an opportunity to look at whether it's, through the Office of Justice programs, whether it's looking at the new, office that they're building, whether it's looking at the legislator, whether they're looking at potential monetary resources. How can we then garner those and get those directed up here? Because as you mentioned, it's also not just disrupting those other students who are there. You think about having to call law enforcement in to potentially address these issues. Now you're taking them away from other work that they could be doing because they're having to go to a school to address, issues that are happening at the school. So the more that we can invest on that front end, I like to think that, yes, it is an investment, as you say, every which way you slice it, but I think the investment on the front end tends to be a lot cheaper and not as, doesn't have the longevity of an investment as those behaviors who become, more integrated in them. It's much harder to change. As I know as an adult, I've been trying to stop drinking sodas now for about 10 years, and I had one on the way up here. So you talk about learned behaviors and how hard it is to change that. The more we can do that when youth are still malleable and they're still being able to influence, I think we have a better shot.
A simple example is the DARE program.
Yeah.
It got cut out because of budget constraints and
Yep.
stuff, and has never really come back full circle. Now at least we have some resource officers back in the school.
Oh.
But having young kids with interaction with police officers, and that is a good thing. You know?
Absolutely.
It's healthy to have that, and
Yeah.
when that disappears, there's just this big vacuum left,
Absolutely.
empty.
And I think this conversation in general just really highlights the importance of participation in the multi-stakeholder local collaborative meetings. This isn't a perspective that we're going to hear all the time, and hearing this perspective from you commissioners is really helpful to us as well, and to be able to bring that perspective to the stakeholder group as well. Hearing from social services, if we're missing someone from the school, say for example in that local collaborative meeting, bringing those people to the table so we can have all those different perspectives and really come together to collaborate on creating effective solutions for problems like that.
And what is DOC's role in this, and how's that translate from probation on down?
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. And when you look at, the new dollars, that are going to be coming through for probation, but to your point, how are we going to be utilizing those? It's one thing to get the monetary, resources, but how are we going to be intentional and strategic about utilizing those so that, again, we're actually seeing a return on that investment here, that is not just necessarily going to the furtherment of more FTEs, even though that might be necessary, but what are the maybe particular programs that we can be utilizing for that, right? And those that are proven to work. One thing I talk about is the quality assurance of the programs that we do use. So when we're sending you to out-of-home placement, we trust that if you say we send a youth to you, that you are going to be able to address their issues. So when they come back, we should expect that there should be some type of change in it. When we don't see that, we have to then start to look at, is that a provider that we necessarily want to keep going to? It might be the one that we've used traditionally for the last 10 to 15 years. But if it's not working, and now I have a couple kids back in front of me, and now I have to look at another now out-of-home placement because that one was a failure, well, that's an issue. So how are we also evaluating those programs to ensure that we're actually, again, getting a bang for our buck?
Another question.
We love talking about. For me, it's good to be able to jump back into this space, and I mean that just sincerely. Just having an opportunity to, again, not just also focusing on the issues that plague the state, and our youth, but also have an opportunity to talk about those successes, too as well, right? And how can we replicate those too? But for us, it's also about, holding those state agencies, holding the legislature accountable, right? It's one thing for them to get on the microphone and talk about all the issues, right? And kind of, glamorizing about the problem. What are you doing to fix it? What are you doing to address these issues? And that's part of the work that we feel that we have to
Really
continue.
good at throwing money at things.
And previously, Katrina had mentioned the possibility of funding the Northern Region Coordinator position. My goal as the Northern Region Coordinator is to continue to have my position be grant funded, at the very least partially. Coming from probation, we all understand the high costs of having youth in placement, sometimes upwards of 70, 80, 90, even $100,000 a year for some youth in placement if it's year-long type of secure detention. And again, we absolutely understand the cost burden, especially to some smaller counties. So again, my goal is to at the very least, have my position to be partially grant funded, if not fully grant funded. And we do have some time to continue to look into that type of funding opportunity for my position. But again, we really do understand the cost of everything that the county has to fund. So I'd like to keep that cost burden as low as possible for the county.
Oh, good.
You can invite us back anytime.
Yeah.
We love coming up to Hubbard County, and it's just nice to be in person and see you all, that's for sure.
Absolutely.
It's possible to beat that pop. I used to be addicted to Mountain Dew, and I haven't touched it in a long time now.
Well, then I need to call you and pick your brain, because I've tried the water bottle. I've tried to put enough fruit in there to fill it up so it looks jazzy. It just doesn't work.
As long as you're not adding sugar to your cola.
At least he's not starting the morning out with Kool-Aid.
Yeah.
I was in a meeting the other day and somebody had fruit punch Kool-Aid, and I said, ooh, that is a sugary way to start your morning, just straight Kool-Aid, so.
Again, thank you all. It's been an absolute pleasure. So as Katrina mentioned, anytime y'all ever have any questions or you said, hey, they came up here and said that, I want to bring them back up here to please don't hesitate to ever have us back or call. We'll definitely love making the trip up. So really appreciate your time today.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Let's see, we have someone from Mississippi Headwaters.
Good morning. Wow, that's a very heavy topic, and this is going to be much lighter, I guarantee you. But thank you, Commissioner Van Kampen, for inviting me. I'm Zach Gunick with Beltrami County Environmental Services staff, and all my duties, since I'm the county water planner, are delegated to the Soil and Water Conservation District. And so I'm here to talk about the Mississippi River Headwaters Comprehensive Plan. It's part of the One Watershed, One planning process, which I'm sure all of you are aware, where we, a county and SBCDs across 5 counties, Beltrami, Clearwater, Hubbard, Itasca, and Cass, join together to implement the Headwaters Plan, the Mississippi River Headwaters Plan. And it's all really, at the end of the day, meant for protecting and improving natural resources by working with private landowners on a voluntary basis to implement the practices that they would like to do. And so if we go, I think we got a PowerPoint up there, yeah. So if we want to go to the next slide. I just kind of want to remind everyone the structure here. So again, we're working across 5 different counties and 5 different SWCDs. There are 10 different partners in this watershed. And for our structure, we have a MOA that we basically established a joint powers collaboration. So there's no single entity that runs the watershed. It's each county approves the work plans and budgets as we go on. But in that MOA, we have a policy committee, which Commissioner Van Kampen is a member of, and he also is the vice president for that committee. And they have through our agreement, they have the authority to approve budget changes of up to $50,000. But we're going through a pretty major work plan shift here. Just go to the next slide. For a couple of reasons. This is the first time, this is the first budget and work plan we have had for the Mississippi River Headwaters. So it was a newly adopted plan. Work was estimated based on plan goals. And we really relied on knowledge from other program use, which is different than the programs that are now offered in the watershed. And then we also received the money during the construction season. So the money was received last year in about May, which in the soil and water world, you're already going 100 miles an hour. And so it's really hard to get all that money out and make people aware of the new stuff that's happening. So with all these things coming together, we're doing a major budget work plan shift. So go to the next slide. So just kind of some background information. We have some pretty high level buckets of money for different practices in forestry and ag and shoreline. But within each one of those, we created a soft budget for all the staff partners to work together to kind of base on, to kind of get an idea, okay, how much money do we have for staff, and then how much money we have for projects, and what's our goals, and so everyone can kind of project how they're going to get there. So then using those budgets, and we updated our new work plan where each partner reviewed their expected workload, so over the next year, and then reallocated funds based on that projected workload. And for example, the Hubbard Soil and Water Conservation District took monies from their agriculture issues and moved them into forestry and shoreline, which they have more projects available, and would be something that they can implement in a reasonable time frame. Next slide. So just budget comparisons. So here's a table. So the first column is all the different issues within the plan that have a line item budget. The second column is the 2022 Watershed Basin Implementation Fund budget, which was what you originally approved. And then the third column is what we're asking you to approve at your next board meeting. And then you can see the comparison. So for forestry, we're actually decreasing the amount of funds in that issue by just a little over $26,000. And like stewardship's going up by 13,000, but agriculture is a major one that's decreasing by $117,000. And majority of that is actually in Beltrami County, reducing them, because we're already, surprisingly enough, we're already hitting our agricultural goals. In our original projections, we were assuming our cost share, our flat rates would be higher than what they are. They're actually much lower, and we're still hitting our goals, so there's a lot of money left over in that issue. So that's where a big chunk of the money is then shared between different projects. So then the biggest increases would be in urban stewardship, which there's 4 urban places throughout the watershed. A chunk of that is going to go for a couple stormwater projects in Bemidji. Another chunk is going to go for a couple stormwater projects in Deer River and Itasca. The other biggest increase is the $44,000 in watercourse stewardship. There's a portion on the Mississippi River that a bank has sloughed off, and that's going to be a major restoration project on the Mississippi River itself within Beltrami County. And so those are just kind of a couple highlights, but again, what we're really asking you to approve at the next meeting is that 2023 update. But I'm going to get a little bit more into detail on the next slide. Go ahead. So everyone wants to know, well, how this affects each county within the watershed. And so here, the top box is basically the staff budgets. And when we went through this process, we did not change any staffing, allocated staffing funds unless that county wanted to. And so, for example, Hubbard and Clearwater, their staff dollars stayed exactly the same. They just moved into different areas. Like I already mentioned, Hubbard moved from agriculture to forestry and lakeshore, so that would be reflected in those new soft budgets that the steering team and partners work off of. The biggest change here is Itasca decreased their amount of staff time, and most of that's going over to Cass County. But what's happening is they're basically subcontracting Cass County to do a culvert inventory in Itasca. So they're still receiving benefit from those dollars. And then the bottom table is a project budget update. And so there you can see Beltrami's got a major increase of 77,000. Again, that's related to the stormwater projects and the project on the Mississippi River. Clearwater's got a major decrease, and that's because they're not doing as much agriculture. So we're also, Beltrami and Clearwater have a shared services agreement where Clearwater actually implements most of the ag practices in Beltrami County. But like I said, we're already hitting our goals, or we're going to be hitting our goals, and there's money left over, so we need to move that over and try to get that spent out as best we can. So the thing about these grant agreements is they're 3-year agreements, but ideally we'd like to get them done in 2 years, because we can get new grants every 2 years. And as soon as you start having those grants overlap, you're gonna get behind on your work, and you're always gonna feel like you're catching up. So ideally, we'd like to spend it out this year. Realistically, we're not going to, but we're still gonna get another grant round probably early next year. And so there's gonna be 2 grants going at the same time. So we'll be closing this one up, and then the next one will be starting right behind it. So if there are additional projects, we're going through the work plan process right now. We can get that into that new work plan and continue to move forward and do good stuff for our natural resources throughout the Headwaters. And so that was, like I said, a very brief, kind of high level overview of the budget and kind of the, some work plan items. But if there's any specific questions, I'm definitely here to answer them.
Now, Zach, these dollar figures are basically dollars that are coming into Hubbard County, well, the whole watershed
The whole
region.
watershed, yep.
But then what you've got filtered out here for Hubbard County is dollars coming into Hubbard County.
Right, yeah, so the staff for Hubbard, so that 40,480.50 cents, all of that is gonna be for staff monies for the SWCD currently. Environmental services are also encouraged, if there are projects, definitely, be in the new work plan. And then again, the bottom one, the Hubbard, that's 68, well, in the new work plan, you're going up 1,000 roughly, $69,063.56. Those are projects dollars that landowners are going to use to do various projects, and most likely it'll be forestry projects and/or lakeshore projects.
Thank you.
Is coming through Bowser? Is that where the
Yes.
money comes from? Yeah.
Yeah, so this is a clean water fund, and it's if you have one of these plans, you basically get they work their formulas as new plans come online, but you're basically guaranteed an amount of money every 2 years to do projects based on the work in your plan.
So just out of curiosity, so if you had a really big project you wanted to do in the watershed, is there potential for additional funding available?
Absolutely. So there are a couple ways of doing this. Bowser still has competitive grants. So but we applied for a competitive grant and got it for a major stormwater project in the city of Bemidji. And so that's different than what we're using the plan dollars for. But if there's a couple $100,000 project that needs to get done, and the group agrees, we can use this funds for that too, or a combination thereof. And so, there's a whole bunch of other resources out there. We often get monies from Enbridge, and so that's a very good partnership with private funds and state funds to do really large projects.
Okay. Anything else?
No, I'm pretty familiar, having been with part of the Leech Lake one and now the
Yeah.
Mississippi Headwaters now, and then Crow Wing, we'll be starting that one soon, so.
Yep. Yeah, I'm on the Crow Wing one.
Yeah.
In fact, we just started our policy committee meetings. Yep. So just getting started.
Yep. The process of the plans have gotten a lot shorter. We've learned a lot over the past couple of years, and so we've gotten a lot quicker and a little bit better of finishing these plans. Because at the end of the day, we want to stop planning, and that's kind of what the point of going through this process is. And then you're going to have a dedicated amount of funding to go and do the work based on that plan. So to me, it's a great system where, the problem for areas like Hubbard and Beltrami and also others throughout the north is the Mississippi River Headwaters really doesn't have that many issues. It's a really high quality system, and to try to compete with areas in the south or the metro, we've just never been able to compete with the amount of restoration that needs to happen, where we're more preserving the kind of the rural aspect of these counties and protecting the forestry and the lakes and stuff. And now through this, we're able to get funds to actually do that kind of work. Before, it was pretty difficult.
I was on the or I still am, gonna go change once we get our new commissioner, but I was on the Leech River one at the beginning, and this example of the planning process going a lot quicker. We were deliberating for a fairly good amount of time just on the bylaws, but
Yeah.
on the bylaws for the crowing one, just a couple minor changes, because it was,
Yep.
had a template from previous ones, and we were done.
Oh, yeah. Well, hopefully these processes keep going that way because we're all getting sick of planning.
Yeah. Well, good. Well, thank you.
Yep.
Exactly.
Thank you. Thank you.
Then Ted, or actually UKG?
Sure, if you wanna ask your questions or make comments, I can respond, or I can just give you an update of where we're at and how we got there.
Okay. I guess I've been getting calls from the highway department employees. They feel that their timesheet is the specific issue where they have to fill one out for RT Vision and now also one for UKG. And it sounds like it's creating more work for their accounting staff over there too. I reached out to Jed to get his slant on it, see if there's some kind of a solution. I guess we spend hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars on computer programs that are supposed to be helping staff do their jobs more efficiently, yet we still added over 20% to the staff since I became a commissioner. But this seems to be an example where it's not working for that department, and if there's a solution, and I guess that's partly why I'm speaking out today, is I want those people that did call me to know that I'm listening, and I'm trying to do something, but I am just one commissioner.
So we've been talking about this for 2 years. The board approved this. We needed to move off of our old payroll system. The way that we were doing it was really super cumbersome. We had 2 people in the payroll office doing payroll 8 days out of 10. We will reduce that significantly by using UKG because all the calculations are done in the system and nothing is done on paper. What we were getting from the highway department was summary data. We were not calculating payroll in the payroll office for highway department, which is a liability. So we will be calculating payroll in the payroll office for all employees with this new system, which means that a lot of the duplicate work that they're doing is they were running their own payroll and comparing it against the one that was running payroll, and they were spending a lot of time auditing. I'm not entirely sure what they're gonna need to continue to do to make sure that they're doing their cost accounting. I know that they need to do that. I know that many counties have switched to UKG. The highway department is using summary data from payroll to populate their cost accounting rather than taking summary data from cost accounting to populate payroll. All employees, including you all got notices this morning and you're getting updates on how to log in. We'll need to be able to log in to do employee data changes, benefits changes, pull your check stubs, look at your tax documents. Everybody's gonna need to be able to log into UKG to see their payroll and benefit information. We met with JED and highway staff end of May, and we said, if you can give us a report out of RT Vision that populates all the data points so that we can run a payroll without them filling out a UKG, so that basically their time card would translate directly to a time card in UKG, then that would be fine. They didn't do that. As a matter of fact, we were told by staff that that's not necessary. She called the state auditor's office to verify that they could hold their own payroll records in highway and we could have our records over here. Well, policy-wise, we're not okay with that. Payroll is payroll, highway is highway. I know the cost accounting system is complicated. I know that they manage a lot of money with that. I know that our payroll and benefits budget is more than 3 times that number. And we, with the new legislative changes and the new need to be very accurate and detailed with all of our benefits administration and the different accruals, payroll has to be payroll, it has to be primary data. So we had an opportunity for them to work with RT Vision and UKG to populate the time card with data, not with summary data. And it didn't happen. So there's a whole lot more to the story.
Yeah.
But payroll's gotta be payroll and it's gotta come from primary data. And eventually, everybody's gotta log into UKG to get their benefits information, to get their payroll information, to make changes relative to their employment with us if they've got new beneficiaries or change beneficiaries or whatever that is. There were a couple things that really frustrated me with that process. We had a conversation and we said, if you can give us primary data, we'll consider it. And we were flatly told, you don't need primary data, you can work with summary data. And that was kind of the end of the conversation.
I thought too, maybe that RT Vision could populate UKG, but that'd be an extra program. I don't know, I'm a computer illiterate here a little bit, so, but I'm sure that would be an additional cost.
I don't know if it'd be additional cost. There's a lot of manual manipulation of data. There's a lot of, we want to keep doing it the way we want to do it instead of figuring out how to use new systems more efficiently. I think that there's a way to take the data out of the payroll system, eliminate the RT Vision time cards, and then work directly into the cost accounting program. I'm not going to ask the payroll staff to go backwards and maintain two time card systems anymore.
I think what I'm hearing too is that these employees, they're not sitting behind a desk. You know, they're climbing in their trucks or in their graders or whatever kind of equipment, you know, and
You can log in from your phone, you can log in from anywhere. We're rolling out all of that functionality now. It'll be so much more efficient for employees.
so hopefully in the end though, it'll be a smoother.
It's gonna be a transition, but it should be a smoother process when we're done. It will definitely be for payroll. And I don't know how you measure that, but payroll needs to be populated with primary time card data.
I guess it's one of these things where in January, I believe this came before the board, you know, we were given information which made it all sound good, but then when some of these things get into actual practice, they don't work as smoothly as,
Paymate was going away, it was no longer gonna be supported. UKG was the choice of MIN-CCC. They're kind of our provider of choice.
yeah.
We really had to follow suit with that.
I know there's a number of counties now that are also going on to
Yep.
UKG.
This is gonna be an issue for a lot of people, and there's about 3 or 4 different solutions between payroll and cost accounting. And they're working on that. UKG is working on that. New Roads is the cost accounting system that they have. RT Vision is the one that's in the middle that probably doesn't need to be there eventually. It's probably the redundancy, but it is the way that everybody's used to doing it right now. I'm not at all diminishing the need for them to have accurate records. I'm just saying payroll has to be accurate first. Everything else can come from that.
So hopefully, in the future,
People don't like change. I get that.
So what is, in a nutshell, what is the difference between RT Vision and UKG? Are they, it's more about the time cards, isn't it?
the timesheets or whatever, yeah.
So now are they doing that manually? Punching in?
I don't know what they're
Some
doing.
sort of
As a matter of fact, I think at this point, the highway department is having them duplicate punch into 2 systems and using one to send to payroll and using one to process their cost accounting.
Cause I can't believe there's that much difference. I mean, it's like going from paper to computer screen.
There's a
be
lot of detail, because for the cost accounting, they have to account for their hours, the piece of equipment they're using, and the road that they're working on. So there's a lot of data and matrix in that. And I understand that it's complicated. I also understand it's vital. But UKG is not just a time card system, it's an integrated human resource information system. So we'll be integrating 4 systems that HR was using into one system, which will make us significantly more efficient with this office of 4 staff. It's necessary, and it's when the benefits enrollment this year will be done in that. Individual elections will be done in that in the next couple of weeks. If you need to change your W-4 filing, you can do that online and yourself and interact with that. So all of those manual processes, this one is actually one that's gonna solve problems. The one problem it created was related to the cost accounting.
And I know that's how they get their dollars from the state and feds is through that.
No, they have to account for them. They have to reconcile it. We've got 260 employees and they got 14, 20, and we all need to be on one payroll system. We can't have two payroll systems. Our dollars for payroll and benefits are primarily funded by the levy. We've got over $22 million this year, and we need to be just as accurate with the with the financial accounting for that. So, and we did have an opportunity for them to do that. RT Vision worked with UKG, and in the end, Highway Department staff said, you don't need details. You can do a summary. They can run payroll that way. And I'm like, I can run payroll that way, but I cannot administer all the data we need to administer and be accountable to and for without full-time card data. So it got to the point where a decision had to be made or we weren't gonna get paid on next Friday. So that's, I know that people are still concerned about that. We're still gonna work to support getting the right amount of data. I'm hoping that punching 2 time cards is a temporary solution. I'm assuming that UKG and New Road should be working on some way they can communicate together. The truth of the matter is, right now, all of their conversions and matrices are in RT Vision. It's the extra player because we don't need it for anything but that. The cost accounting is through New Roads. We need RT Vision to do the interpretation between payroll and cost accounting. And other people have found other solutions.
Okay. Thank you.
Mhm.
I hope it makes sense to the people that are actually using the system. Because I'm not using it, so, and I didn't use the old one, so.
You will and have the ability. You didn't use the old time card system, but you did look at your pay stubs.
Yeah.
So that, all of this is gonna be in the same place for you and all of the rest of the employees. And that is gonna be much more efficient for everyone.
I see.
Sounds like once they get down to where they just gotta report it one time, then it'll be a lot easier for them.
Hopefully, yeah.
Just
Well, like I said, it's hard for me to articulate some of this information because it doesn't make any sense to me. But hopefully, if I get any more calls, I can ask them to review the last few minutes of our work session today, and hopefully that'll answer some of their questions, and maybe not. All I can do is try.
Changes stuff. Without any other complications. Changing where you log in to punch your time is tough.
Yeah.
It's
Zach tried to show me on my computer this morning, and it didn't work, so.
Yeah.
Like going from Android to Apple. It was tough for a couple of weeks, but now I'm much better.
Okay, well then I guess that completes our work session, unless there's anything else. Have a motion to adjourn?